So I'm looking here at Skin's 5 elements, and they are 1 to 5. User control, gratification, purpose, feedback, and consistency. And I think these ones have come closest to the mark. I think this is a really good response because they tend to describe what is essential to interactive experience versus non-interactive experience, and things which are important to the success of the interactive experience. And you know, from a personal point of view, I guess they dovetail quite closely with the sort of things that I would identify as being important about those experiences. So user control, clearly you have to be able to control it for it to be interactive. If it starts to operate in ways which you don't expect it to, then it's not successful, because it may be interactive, but it may be interactive in a really tangential way. That consistency and a sense of purpose relates back to gratification, the second point, that it has to give you something in a format and in a response format which is expected. And this dovetails back to the idea of aligning the user and the experience in a way which is meaningful for both. So I think that's a really good point. Purpose. Again, those three work really well together because purpose defines what the scope is. And I mentioned this in one of the talking points. The idea of scope in the development of software is really important because software is such a finite system. When you develop, this includes websites, it includes a piece of application software, it includes an operating system. But fundamentally things like application processes, again Photoshop's a good example, or a website, something for browsing photography, each of these has to have a very clear scope and a clear way of specifying how you go about that scope. But saying what it is not is almost as important as what it is. So purpose is a really good way of summing up this idea of the scope. What the purpose of it is going to let you know what you shouldn't be doing within that interactive experience. So that's, I think, a fundamental thing and something which is really important about not just what the thing itself is, but the way in which it aligns the expectations of the user and expectations of the provider. And this actually enhances what we call, the process of communication, that it starts to align the messaging or the kind of expectations between those two groups. Feedback, that's a really important one because it lets you know the extent to which you're able to operate consistently and in an expected manner with the experience. So I think feedback's a great point. And the last one, consistency. That is about making the scope and the purpose apprehensible through feedback, through the expectations of the user. And I think that's a really, really good point, that if you can control it, the control is somehow gratifying or successful from your point of view, that the purpose exists and is understood by the person who both produces and uses the system, that there's feedback which tells you that it is in fact operating and responding in the way that you would like it to, and that the messages are consistent. The purpose is understood and manifested in a consistent and clear way over time. I think that's a really important point. So great response. I think Team Skin probably nailed this one best of all the groups.